Well, hello there and welcome to another Fighter Combat School video. It's been a while since I posted the last one. And this is actually kind of not a new one, this is actually a recap of many things I already stated in many of my previous videos. Now, the reason for that is that, well, since I posted my first Fighter Combat School videos where I mostly explain most of the basics of air combat, well, a long time has gone ago and a lot of new people are around. Also, I think that my English right now is a little bit better than back then, so probably I will be easier to understand. Also, I'm much more fluent, so probably the big moments where I was like, all the time will be gone. Still happen now and then, but yeah, they are a lot more strange. But mostly it's because of the new people. A lot of new people have arrived to the channel, and not everyone has seen every of the videos, of course. And particularly so, the first Fighter Combat School videos were a little bit, let's call it, dry. Too much technical explanation and maybe too little action. Now, don't get me wrong, you are not going to see a lot of action in this video, but however, I'm trying to make it a little bit more, well, I'm not going to say funny, but at least entertaining. Now, in this particular video, what we are going to see is what's energy fighting. Again, it's constant on my videos, but that's very important, and you are going to see it why in this video. It's basically the fundamental of air combat, energy fighting. The reason why you are going to see no video in this particular case, I mean, I'm not going to put any War Thunder capture, I'm not going to use any air-to-air video. You will see some images, of course, but you are going to see no video. This is actually a video I have put a lot of thought in, and I'm going to put a lot of work in, and I'm going to do a long editing process to make it both interesting to see, easy to understand, and most of everything else informative. And I have found out that in most cases, if you put a video with action, I mean planes in the background, you take your attention away from what you are saying. So I want to keep people focused on what I'm saying to get them to understand the things I'm explaining, and then, I mean, it's as easy to see this video, see the fundamentals of energy fighting, see any of my other videos, and see how I'm putting those ideas in practice. So instead of putting those videos in this particular clip, what I'm going to do is to put images, put a lot of text, so you can follow me easier. And well, later what you can do is just to move on and see any other of my videos, to see me fighting in air combat, and you will realize I'm doing exactly what I'm explaining in this one. Now, as I said, this video is about energy fighting. Now, of course, energy fighting is kind of a very used expression. Everyone says energy fighter, energy fighter. Well, what's an energy fighter? An energy fighter is a plane that uses energy to kill the enemy. I didn't explain anything, isn't it? Actually, I didn't. Every plane is an energy fighter. We are going to explain it in a second. But first, what's energy? Well, energy in air combat means adding up the speed of your plane and the altitude of your plane. Your energy status is defined by your speed and altitude at a given moment. So the higher you are, the more energy you will have. The faster you are, the higher energy you have. Now, what's this for? I mean, what do you want energy for? Well, basically, without energy, your plane will fall off the sky. Planes, I'm not going to explain why planes fly, because I already have a video on that, and it's technical enough, but planes need the speed. If a plane can't stay flying, if it's stopped in the air, it will fall out of the sky. So it needs speed to fly. So it needs energy. Once a plane is slow enough, it will fall down the sky. So if a plane runs out of energy, it will fall down the sky. So all planes are energy fighters, because if your fighter runs out of energy, it's going to fall off the sky. Very easy to understand. Now, of course, we know what's energy now. It's speed and altitude. It's kinetic energy and potential energy. But what's giving you energy? in a given moment, if you are flying, why don't you fall off the sky? Because energy is going to run out at one or other moment. Well, you don't fall off the sky because there's something that is giving you energy, and that something is your engine. Your engine is producing power, and that power is adding up energy to your plane in the form of acceleration or climb rate. So at a given moment, your plane has a steady income. Well, actually, it's not steady. It depends on your power. The higher the power, the more energy you get by unit of time. Now, what takes energy from you? Well, everything. In a plane, you are losing energy constantly, all the time. Just by staying in the air, you are losing energy because you are moving through the air at a given speed. And moving through the air costs you energy because you have to beat the drag of the air. The air is trying to resist you advancing through it. So you are wasting energy just by staying in the air. Now, it can be written, of course, that's something that is taking energy from you. If your income of energy is higher than your waste of energy, you will accelerate or climb. You will win general energy. If the waste of energy is higher than your income, you will be losing energy. So for instance, let's see an example here. You are in a plane that's maybe 300 kilometers per hour at top power and at an altitude where your plane top power is at 500 kilometers per hour. You are doing nothing but flying in a straight line. You are accelerating because if you are at full power and your top speed is 500 kilometers per hour and you are only at 300 kilometers per hour, your plane will tend to accelerate. You are winning energy by unit of time. Now think of the same situation, but your plane is at 700 kilometers per hour. If your plane is at 700 kilometers per hour and your top speed at a given altitude is 500 kilometers per hour, and you do nothing else but just using full power, your plane will slow down because it's over the top speed. So your total energy is going down. Now this is a very important concept. Why? Because a lot of people make the mistake of staying too fast, too quick, for too long. Now, if you have seen this instance as you and you understand it, you will see that if you are over your top speed and you do nothing else, eventually you are going to lose that speed and you're going to lose that energy. Now, energy fighting is all about conserving energy and managing energy. Actually, sometimes most of the time you want to conserve your energy, but sometimes you want even to dump it. In the particular case of being too fast, you are dumping your energy, you are losing energy. And that gives you an idea that the speed has a limit. Your energy storage has a limit. Now, to picture this and to give you a proper idea of exactly what I mean, I usually like to compare energy to a bank account. So you have a bank account where you have a given income by minute, and you have to spend the money in that bank to do a lot of different stuff, to stay in the air, to do maneuvering, to stay fast enough not to fall off the sky, to do turning, to basically everything you do in the air is going to cost you energy. So you have this bank account, and in that bank account you have two sub accounts. One of them is kinetic energy, speed. The other one is potential energy, altitude. But the bank account with speed has a limit. If you go over that limit, the bank will take the excess and you will lose it. Now you have the ability to change money from the bank's accounts. So you have the ability to change the money from your speed to your altitude account. But the bank is going to take a toll out of that. I mean, it's going to take an interest on you because you are doing a transaction of the bank on the bank. So you can trade speed for altitude. You can trade altitude for speed. However, none of those transactions is perfect. You are going to lose a little bit on the transfer. But still, If you are so fast and so quick that if you stay still and keep on going, you are going to lose all that top speed eventually, it's much better to trade that extra speed for extra altitude, lose that excess speed up to a point where you are not going to lose it anymore because you are below your top speed, and trade it for altitude. You are going to lose a little bit on the trade, but it's not the same as just wasting it because you have too much in the bank account of the speed. Um, Now, these are some ideas about energy fighting that I want to put forward because there's a lot of misconception about being fast. You want to be fast in some planes, but also you want to remind that you can't stay fast forever because your plane will eventually slow down. So you really need to apply the idea of trading speed for altitude and altitude for speed all the time because otherwise you're dumping energy. Now let me go back for a second to something I said before. All planes are energy fighters. Now there's it's funny because there are actually very different planes. They are fight very differently, and there are differences between a plane which is got good at low speed turning to a plane that is horrible at turning but is good at boom and zoom. Now people try to usually think in terms of this is a turner, a plane which is good at turning. So it's not an energy fighter. A lot of times I see the well in the forums or in posts or even just people talking in the game saying that, for instance, the BF-109 is an energy fighter while the Spitfire is not. Well, no, the BF-109 is an energy fighter, the Spitfire is an energy fighter. The only thing here is that they use the energy in different ways to beat the enemy. People tend to get distracted by the names of the things. So they see someone calling a plane energy fighter and they instantly assume that the fighters that are not energy fighters don't need energy to fight. No, that's a big mistake. Every plane needs energy. Because without energy, they can't maneuver. And if they can't maneuver, they are going to be shot out of the sky. So if you are in a zero, which is a plane that turns in a dime at slow speeds, is really good at turning, but you run out of energy, you won't have speed to turn anymore, no matter how good your plane is at turning. And you will fall down the sky if someone doesn't shoot you before. So, again, every plane is an energy fighter. Air combat is energy fighting. All kinds of air combat. Now, of course, there are distinctions between different styles of fighting. And one of them is called energy fighting. But that doesn't mean that the other styles don't need energy. It only says that one of the styles is called energy fighting, nothing else. But actually, all planes, the whole of air combat is energy fighting. Now, once that is stated, we have to see which are the differences. Because, of course, I'm just calling a Zero an energy fighter. And I'm also calling a P-47 an energy fighter. But they fly in very different ways. And they fight in very different ways. Now, here is where the distinction comes. In air combat, there are two schools or styles of fighting. I actually like to divide the second one in two more, but for now, let's say there are two combats of school. The first is turn and burn, or just turn fighting. Turn fighting is using your energy to turn at very low speeds, low to very low medium speeds, to gain angles on the enemy because you turn better than him. It's the general idea of air combat, turning harder than the enemy to get into his six and shoot him down. It's angle fighting. But you need energy to do that. If you run out of energy, you are dead. Now, energy fighter. What's energy fighting? Well, what's energy fighting in this context? I mean, energy fighting is also turn and burning as energy fighter. But what's an energy fighter? I would say that is a kind to be a vampire. And no, if you hear them being a vampire and you think about this, or if you think about this, And for God's sake, if you think about this, please switch off the computer and go play something else, because that's not the point. No, being a vampire means that you keep your energy up while you suck the energy of your enemy dry. That's being a vampire fighter. And it's actually what you do in energy fighting. While the turn and burners, the turn fighters, use the energy to outturn the enemy and to try to win angles on him and get on his six and shoot him down, a vampire fighter, an energy fighter, what does is using energy conservative tactics and energy superiority moves to use his energy to bleed the other guy dry of his. And once the other guy is out of energy, he can't maneuver anymore. And at that moment, he comes down and destroys it. That's the difference between both styles. Now, as I said before, I usually divide this second type of fighting, energy fighting or vampire fighting, into schools, which is the actual energy fighters and the boom and zoomers. Now, there's a further distinction between these two schools, which are basically the same. They are vampire fighters. Their objective is to bleed the enemy dry of their energy and kill them. But they do it in very different ways. Now, a turn fighter, as we said, turns harder than the enemy, tries to shoot him down. Energy fighter uses excellent acceleration, excellent climb rate, or in other words, an excellent input of energy per second, because his engine is very powerful, to have more energy than the enemy and use that extra energy he gets by second to keep the other guy in the defensive, force him to maneuver very hard and to burn his energy by turning very hard until he's out of energy, while the energy fighter is still with a lot of energy, and at that moment come and destroy it. The boom and zoomer is a plane that uses its great ability to keep his speed and energy up, because he's a great energy keeper, to do energetic conservative moves and do exactly the same as an energy fighter. Put the other guy under pressure so he burns all his extra speed or his altitude, so he burns his energy, and at that point, when the other guy is without energy, come down on him and destroy him. There are very different styles. Might not seem like so, but they are. Now let me do a further explanation of each one of the types. First, we come with the turn and burners. The turn and burners are lightweight planes, quite light, with a very big wing area. This usually gives very good low speed turning ability, but at the cost of high speed maneuverability and energy keeping. Because the heavier your plane is, the better it's going to be at keeping its energy up at high speed. The second type is the classic energy fighter. I call it the upwards fighter, and you're going to see why in a second. The energy fighter is a plane that has a superb power to weight ratio. That means that it has a great ability to win a lot of energy by unit of time, by second. So he has a huge income of energy, while the other plane he's fighting does not. So he used that extra energy he gets by second to put the other guy under pressure and destroy him. And how does he accomplish that? Well, if you have a lot of energy income by second, what you want to do is to use that to accelerate faster than the enemy, and particularly to climb higher than the enemy. And while you are on top, go on the other guy, bounce him repeatedly, so the other guy is forced to avoid time after time, wasting his own energy in avoidances while you stay in the offensive, and eventually kill him. Now, keep that in mind, it's an upwards fighter, because his tendency is to go up. Use the acceleration and the climb rate. Usually these planes are pretty light. They are not all of them light, but most of them are. So they don't do for great boom and summers because they are not heavy enough. So again, upwards fighter. Now finally we'll come to the boom and summer. The boom and summer is a heavyweight. It's a plane that's really heavy. And no matter how powerful his engine is, it doesn't have a good power loading. It doesn't have a lot of power per unit per weight because it's very heavy. So it can't accelerate or climb as the energy fighter. So instead of relying on the ability of accelerating or climbing faster than the enemy, what the boom and summer does is use its heaviness to stay in very high speeds at all time and use his high speed maneuverability and energy conservation at high speeds to bleed right the other guy of energy. Because a very heavy plane at very fast speeds is going to keep his speed fast longer. It's going to lose his speed slower. So the other guy is going to be naturally losing energy faster than you. But here's the caveat, here's the particular thing. If the boom and summer goes slow, all its advantages are gone. So it's a high speed fighter. You want to stay high. And particularly in boom and summer, you want to do a lot of use of the energy trade. Speed for altitude, altitude for speed. And use energy conservative movements, which means turning as little as possible and using straight runs as long as possible. Straight dives, straight zooms, not maneuvering as little as possible. Now, the thing here is that boom and summers seem challenging, but actually they are the easiest one once you understand their basic concepts. You want to stay fast, you want to stay quick, you want to use the heaviness of your plane to bleed the other guy dry of his energy because the other guy can't stay as fast as you without bleeding his energy. Now this is a particularly interesting subject because everyone thinks that a boom and summer is a plane that should do only dives on lower enemies and zooms and then go away. There's a misconception of boom and summers being good only when they have the energetic advantage. And that's not true. Because if someone has energy over a boom and summer, all the boom and summer has to do is to get his plane really fast, forcing the enemy to go really fast. And when his plane is really good at high speed, keeping his energy, the guy behind is really bad at that. So he will be bleeding energy faster than you. And up to a point where the boom and summer will have more energy than the guy behind, and suddenly the tables are turned. The guy behind has less energy, the boom and summer has more. At that point, zoom away and become offensive. So boom and zooming is not just boom and zooming. It's actually high-speed fighters. So I would actually requalify these three terms you have seen. These are the most common terms, but they led to misconceptions. Turned fighters are cool. I mean, the name is perfect for their role. The second is energy fighters. I will requalify them as upwards fighters, or acceleration fighters, or power fighters, because they use the power loading to accelerate and climb faster than the enemy. And finally, boom and summers, I would call them high-speed dogfighters, because as long as they stay at high speed, nothing can beat them if it's not a better boom and summer. So those are the three kinds of fighters they are. Now, remember, energy fighter or vampire fighter doesn't mean you have to have energy before an engagement to win. And that goes for all the planes, because as I said, every plane is an energy fighter, even a Zero. Even a World War I biplane was an energy fighter. You don't need energy to win. Energy gives you the initiative, gives you the first step, gives you the call of when to attack, gives you the first attack, so to speak. But if you are smart in using your plane, you only have to avoid one or two times and the enemy is going to have problems keeping that advantage. We'll see that in later videos because I'm going to go deeper into these explanations. But really, if you are lower than an enemy, doesn't mean that the enemy is going to win. And that's one of the big misconceptions of War Thunder. People stay focused on climb rates. They think everything is about climbing. Well, you need to climb, but not being the higher guy doesn't mean you are defenseless. All it needs, or all it means, is that you have to be smart to use your plane's advantages to beat the higher guy. Because all these planes, turn fighters, vampire fighters or energy fighters, and boom assumers have weak points, and they have their own ways to deal one with another. Now, we also have to understand another thing, and that's that one plane can be of different styles depending on the enemy. Now, let me put an instance. The Spitfire. The Spitfire is a plane that turns very well versus German Focke-Wulf Any, for instance. So a Spitfire would be kind of a turn fighter versus German planes, or can excel fighting versus them using turn fighting tactics. However, the same Spitfire that is great at killing German planes by out-turning them is going to be smashed out of the sky if it tries to out-turn a Zero. So, when the Spitfire is a turn fighter versus one plane, it's not against other plane. Now, you only need to identify what's your plane good for, what's your plane's style compared with the plane you are fighting. And then you have to identify the proper tactics to use against that plane in the plane you are flying and apply them. And you will win that way. So, in next videos, I will visit the situation and I will visit one by one how do you want to what do you want to think and how do you want to think about a fight when you are in one of these three kinds of planes versus each one of the three classes mentioned. So if you are in an energy fighter versus a boom assumer, if you are in a boom assumer versus an energy fighter, if you are lower, if you are higher, how do you want to start that combat and what should be your mindset and your objectives to get the upper hand and kill the enemy. So, well, that's going to be it for this video. I hope it really helped you out. Always remember that energy fighting is a complicated stuff because energy fighting is air combat. All air combat is energy fighting. So if you feel that like thinking this is very complicated and it has a lot of things, yeah, it is. Air combat is a very complicated thing and has a lot of variables going on at the same time. But the sooner you start understanding it and learning it, the sooner you will become a little bit better. As always, guys, I hope you found this video informative and instructive. Thank you very much for watching and see you later.